A tale of children for the child inside us all. Let me see if I understand this right. A farmer enslaving, practically enslaving, and manipulating a herd of mindless cows, essentially preventing them from behaving in a way which comes natural to them. Milking them and feeding off of them is then seduced by a smarter man into the belief, the delusion, that animals deserve respect, that it is shameful to manipulate and to exploit, and that they, these poor cows, should roam free, and that if they do, most of them will come back to the fold, to the barn, and offer of their meat and of their milk for free to the farmer, to the retarded farmer who can never be a hunter himself, and that they, these cows, will do so of their own volition. He is convinced by this smarter man, who stands to benefit from roaming cows with no owner, that the cow is no different than he is, than this farmer is, and that he, this farmer, should treat them as he would treat his own children, or in the way that he would want them to treat him. This clever mind is partly right, for this farmer is only slightly more intelligent than the cows he keeps and then releases. But the cows never return. Their domesticated training soon devolves back to their natural state, and despite being preyed upon by predators, one of which is the mind that tricked the farmer, they prefer the possibilities and the power of roaming free to the safety, comfort, and warmth of the farmer's barn. Of course, the farmer also slaughters some of them, so it's not all benevolent. Then this buffoon, having realized that he's been duped because no cows come back and most of them try to headbutt him to death if given the chance, goes crying to the one who sold him this bullshit idea, seeking justice. All the while, this simpleton, who still can't get over the brainwashing which feeds into his own insecurities and fears, holds on to the ideal of equality between bovine and man, where human being and animal are one and the same, resulting in his solution of shaming the cows back to his barn, or of threatening them with vegetarianism, as if the cows gave a shit. The simpleton suddenly realizes that he too is a bovine, a bull full of bullshit, and that he's been tricked by the real farmer in this entire affair, because he no longer requires a bull for his cows, and this bull is up for slaughter, and this is the only reason these cows have been released, or have appeared to be released. It's a sad tale, but let us move on. From my standpoint, a real man sought to understand and control and harness, if he could not fully control, natural forces. He did not cry when he got it wrong, but took his medicine and adjusted his perspective to include his newfound wisdom. What does not kill me makes me stronger, as the saying goes. He adjusted if he survived, if he was fortunate enough to survive. A man, if he was any man at all, took responsibility for his own predicaments, even if they were the result of a mistake on his part, or even if they were a result of lying, or of the other pulling the wool over his tiny head. He did not blame the other for tricking him. He blamed himself first for being tricked, because such a man knew that hypocrisy is part of nature, and that it is only in man-made systems where lying and pretending and faking and exploiting is considered immoral. A real man knows that even though he is incapable or unwilling to use such tactics as hypocrisy and lies, that these are still a part of natural selection, and that not all are as noble and principled as he is, or as he wishes to be. So to listen to these brain-dead men-children, as I call them, with their extensive vocabularies and their educated referentials and referrals, whining about how turning asexual or gay is the solution to the female problem, is like a child turning his back on reality, diving headfirst into fantasyland because the world isn't as nice as he thought it would be. Running to mommy, who sold him the fairy tale to begin with, is like going to a butcher to defend your vegetarian enlightenment. Feminists propose a similar solution to their own femaleness, to their own simplicity. The butch dykes seduce docile, nincompoop, dumb, ugly, fat broads into the appealing idea that men are evil and that the world would be better off without them, because men are attracted to nice bosoms and nicely shaped rumps. In the MRA community, we have effete little stunted minds hooked on computer game realities, seducing genetic garbage on the other end, with the comforting idea that females are vile because they reject them, and that the world would be better off if females never bothered them again, because females choosing the tall, dark, and handsome is comes into conflict with their Hollywood reality. How sad that the reality is that females are what they are and what they have always been, that is, agencies of nature. They are instinctive, emotional, irrational, confused, intuitive, chaotic, needy balls of energy wanting to find someone, something to guide them, to control them, to dominate them, to give them a sense of comfortable belonging, a place to raise their brood. We get a slight variant with the men's rights advocates to the same feminine inability to cope with the real world. You know, nature, before mommy convinces us that human nature was a fabrication, and that man outside paternalistic civilizations was inherently good and just and nice, that man was corrupted by culture, by paternalism, rather than being controlled and directed. You know, like women are, them being representations of nature, that is, women. There's no justice in nature, no compassion. There's no fair play and rules of engagement, and definitely no rights given by a god or a state. We've all heard these stories, have we not? You know, the story where there is someone for everyone, soulmates, where persistence eventually pays off, and where love conquers all and always saves the day. We've all heard of these fairy tales. Now imagine the child who has suddenly realized Santa Claus is a fraud and that he does not actually exist. Imagine him pouting in the corner, threatening the world and Santa himself, that if he does not get the gift he asked for, that he will no longer play with the toys mommy buys for him. Funny shit, huh? If I dare clarify my positions at all, then let it be now. I care not for the myriads of men and women who soil the environment around me and force me to deal with them, because on top of it all, they have a right to be respected, as if respect was something that was given instead of earned, and that they have a right to vote, no matter how stupid and misinformed they are. I cannot care for the idea that they, these masses of morons, are of my kind, that I must offer them what they deserve, and which I think I deserve from them. If I did, I would really give them what they deserve, and it would not be very nice. My sense of self-identification, I would like to think, is above these platitudes, these cultural myths. This is a war indeed. It is now fought not with weapons and violence, although this is always a final option, but with more sophisticated methods of ideas and of husbandry. This is a war over the hearts and the minds of domesticated farm animals, whether they call themselves human or not. Who shall get the most out of them with the least trouble? Who shall feast on their simplicity? Who shall harvest the most from this dull group of manimals, totally immersed in immediacy and living in the moment? Well, a fundamental fact about business marketing is the conviction that where the pussy goes, the men's will follow. What better way to control those more resistant males, the dumbest ones of the lot, than to lead them with cleavage and ass cracks? Right there you get a vast majority, and in this contained world with no frontiers, quality always overpowers quality. Consciousness, awareness if you prefer, is defined by the cognition of difference. An aware mind is aware of difference rather than similarity. He can look at clones and find slight variations to determine which one is which. To be able to discern the difference between clones offers an advantage over the one who cannot. We can say that consciousness is the cognition of diversity, and diversity is what nature is all about. A sensitive palate, for example, can tell the difference between one wine and another. It might also be able to discern between the same brand's year of cultivation in relation to another year's product. This is called a discriminating taste, a refined palate. Discrimination, of course, is a word which evokes this emotional response, a trained response. This discernment is part of a culture or a cultivation of perception, of awareness. It is the ability to discern differences, which distinguishes one mind from another, because similarities are easy to find. The perception of similarities requires the mere simplification, generalization of a phenomena, or an otherness, to such a degree that it all seems uniform. One can simply generalize anything down to its basic perceptible components and then make it nothing more than the same with everything else. For instance, the further away from a painted wall you stand, the more uniform it appears. The surface appears similar in all its perceived detail. But if you stand closer, and then closer still, you begin to pick out details, little divergences, little differentiations, and you realize that the wall is not uniform at all, but that it is defined by differences. Now you can determine what part of the wall you are looking at just by looking closer and seeing details. The less refined doofus, the dullard, the simpleton, can't tell one part of the wall from another, For him, it all looks the same. The wall is one mass of uniform color. Same thing applies in all areas of human cognition and the categories it spawns. Look at humanity with a distant cloudy eye and it seems uniform, all the same. The concept of humanity, of mankind, being a greater generalization and simplification of the population we call a species, and the concept of race or sex. But if you look closer and with a clearer eye, you find variations, patterns of divergence, patterns within patterns, and the term humanity is no longer sufficient to describe who and what you are in relation to it, and who and what you identify with. Ironically, sex or reproduction is the very foundation of what we call species or Homo sapient, and is the very thing which is rejected by liberal cowards, who then claim that sex or sexual orientation is a matter of choice. They would have us believe that our identification with the concept of species is also a matter of choice, since sex is so. But then, homosexuality is something one is born with, according to them. It's all part of a confused mess of self-contradictions in the liberal's mind. All such a cowardly mind knows is that it wants peace and quiet and comfort and belonging and a spiritual awakening to his own non-existence. He is waking up to his own emasculation. Let's use another analogy. Man differentiates life from inanimate existence. He then differentiates by perceiving details of difference between one type of life from another. When and if his perceptions become more refined, he then can perceive more details. He can differentiate subcategories of life within the categories he has already conceived. Categories being the product of perceived patterns, which is what IQ tests are based on. The process of consciousness proceeds further and further still until perceptions become increasingly sophisticated, refined, cultured, cultivated to the point where the generality of life is no different than that of the concept of human, and it is no longer acceptable because such a mind distinguishes, it discriminates to a point where it can become aware of subcategories within subcategories within subcategories. An intelligent mind sees patterns within patterns. This is what makes it sophisticated and intelligent. This is what offers it an advantage. This is what consciousness is. A dog can only see black and white and their combinations or variants of grays. A more refined ocular instrument can perceive color or divergences within the perceptible light spectrum. An even more sophisticated discriminating ocular nerve and the mind to process the information with might perceive further along the electromagnetic field towards the infrared and the ultraviolet. Perception is never complete, but it is more or less precise, more or less sensitive, more or less aware. It is superior or inferior. This said, this current modern culture where discrimination is considered evil is a form of dumbing down or a form of restricting perception, awareness, consciousness. It is an institutionalization of retardation leading to a schizophrenic confusion between genetic and mimetic ideals. For the modern man, everything must seem the same, must seem uniform, because this is the desired delusion. All must pretend, for their own sake, that we are all the same. Equal under the law means a forced pretense where We all must pretend that the other is no different than us. After all, a dumb, less aware animal is more malleable than a smart, more aware one. The war, if we dare to call it with such a word, without feeling a bit silly, is one against a particular kind of male, not about all males. The effete male is fine. The docile, nice guy is fine. The one content to turn away and settle for masturbation and living in artificial realities is fine. The man whore, happy to fuck around, manipulating female simplicity, but laying down no seeds, and so having no temporal effect, is fine. The harmless complainer who expects the institution which makes feminism possible to come to his aid in the name of fair play is fine. The discrimination, pagan, aware, unrelenting, noble male is not fine at all. This last type must go underground, go clandestine, find his own kind amongst males and females, because they are indeed females of his kind. What we are forced into is a change in perspective. To look alike and to be able to carry a fetus no longer suffices. This war is mimetic. It is one of ideals.